Wherewith shall I come before the Lord, and bow myself before the high God? He hath showed thee, O man, what is good, and what doth the Lord require of thee, but to do justly, and to love mercy, and to walk humbly with thy God. Well, welcome to Clough, to the first of our recorded services. And we'll begin with Alfie, who's going to play for us All People That on Earth Do Dwell. I'd like to read now the first 6 verses of Psalm 137. By the waters of Babylon there we sat down and wept when we remembered Zion. On the willows there we hung up our lyres, for there our captors required of us songs, and our tormentors mirth, saying, Sing us one of the songs of Zion. How shall we sing the Lord's song in a foreign land? If I forget you, O Jerusalem, let my right hand wither. Let my tongue cleave to the roof of my mouth, if I do not remember you, if I do not set Jerusalem above my highest joy. Here ends our reading. Well, that's a psalm that reflects the Israelites' experience of exile. How shall we sing the Lord's song in a foreign land? The psalmist asks. And living outside the promised land, living away from Jerusalem, away from the temple, the Jewish people had to develop new ways to worship God. And I thought of this psalm because of the situation we're in at the present time. So I was due to be here this morning at Clough to conduct our normal Sunday worship. And just last Sunday, I don't think any of us expected to be in this position. But I was due to be here. And today, of course, is Mother's Day, and we need to remember our mothers and see them where possible. And of course, at the moment, it may not actually be possible to go and visit our mothers. That's the situation we're in. But I was due to be here to conduct worship, and then to go to Downpatrick to conduct worship there. And the Rev Dr Will Patterson was to take the service at Beli, and Sue, my wife, was to take the service at Dunmurry, and the Reverend Robert McKee was going to take the service at Banbridge, Just last week that was the plans for today. But that's all suspended. And it's a shock to be in this situation, to be honest. You think of a day like this, you come into worship, everybody's here, young and old, the Sunday school, the children would probably have things to give to their mothers, but we're all in a different situation now. We're in a kind of exile. And again, exile from one's church is not a unique experience. It's happened, to give another historical perspective, it's happened to our congregations before. There were times in the 16th and 17th centuries when our religious forebears weren't allowed always to worship publicly, and they didn't have full rights. And even as late as the second decade of the 18th century, the doors of the meeting house of the Downpatrick Church were nailed shut by the authorities for a short time. That's part of the problem of religious persecution. And that's why Huguenots came to Britain and Ireland. It's why the Pilgrim Fathers set sail from this side of the Atlantic to go to America. And it's not, sadly, it's not just an historical experience. There are plenty of countries in the world today where people don't have the right to worship in freedom, people of many different religions. It's gone on for a long time. And last year I was in Poland, and we visited the churches, what had been the churches of the Polish Brethren, a church like ours that was open and broad and tolerant, but which was completely closed down in about 1658 by the authorities. So there are plenty of instances of people being excluded from their churches, from their meeting houses. And that's the situation we're in now. But of course, it's a necessary situation. It's for our social and medical well-being. We need to isolate ourselves. So it's quite a different situation. It's something we've got to do. But still, it feels like a kind of exile. But we're not so much exiled from our church buildings. They're important to us, and we value them. And we've got some very important and beautiful buildings. But more importantly, we're exiled from each other. We're not allowed to meet together, which is not sensible. So we can't come together to worship. So we have to develop new ways to worship, new ways to exist as a church. And this is one of the ways, by going online, by recording acts of worship. And in our homes, we have to remember to keep an active spiritual life, an active life of prayer, reflection and thought. And when we do that, we think of ourselves as part of a community, because that's the important thing. We're bound together as a community. And if we're not physically coming together, we can still do it spiritually, in prayer, in thought, in meditation. And each of our churches is trying to develop ways we can continue to keep in contact. And I thank all those who've been ringing round people and trying to contact people. And I thank those who are working out mechanisms for staying in touch by social media, by email and telephone and so on. But this is one of the ways we express our faith. We have to be aware of our community, of the communities of our churches, and look forward to the time when we can come back together. What life have you if you have not life together? There's no life that is not in community, and no community not lived in praise of God. Even if we can't meet together in person, we have to prize and value that community, because that's what sustained us through centuries, and it will continue to sustain us. We still have to be that community, giving praise and thanks to God in our lives and in our prayers. And our communities, under God, will keep us all safe. Let us pray. Eternal God, keep us in your care and in your shelter in this time of uncertainty. Remind us of your presence and uphold the whole world in your arms. Bless those who are isolated, alone or afraid, with a sense of your presence, and surround us all with your love. Be with those who are sick or unwell. In your compassion, bring them healing and comfort, and support those who are fearful or are in need. We entrust all those we know and love to your care, and ask you to bless and shepherd our churches at this time. We thank you for those whose job it is to care for the sick. Strengthen them with your Spirit, that they may find the skill and the strength to carry out their work. Be with us all now. Guide us and direct us this day and every day. Amen. Now, Father, may thy gracious blessing be with us all. May thy truth direct our minds, thy love possess our hearts, and thy peace rest on our spirits, this day and evermore. Amen.